Hello, it's Ian Marsden here, and I'm in a program called Corel Painter 9.5, and a bunch of people have asked me how you actually draw cartoons on the computer, and I still occasionally work traditionally with pen and ink, but I also love working with my Wacom tablet, which is actually just a digital tablet with a digital pen, and with various programs. Sometimes I draw a sketch on paper first and then scan it in. Other times I work directly in either Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, especially if they're supposed to be vector files, which means they can be scaled without losing any quality. And I also really like to work in Corel Painter, which is this program. I'm only showing you a few menus. I'm showing you the toolbar here, my layers, which are basically just what they mean, layers, and my color mixer. I actually have two large monitors next to each other, and I have most of the other menus on my right monitor, and I use my big monitor for artwork. So I'm just going to give you a little demonstration. Generally when you're drawing cartoons, you would usually first draw a little sketch or a little rough. So for example, I don't know, let's say if I were drawing a duck, for example, you would just want to make sure roughly, you know, where everything is. For placement purposes. Let's say he's holding something. What is he holding? Let's say he's holding an ice cream. Okay, so that is on a layer. This is the canvas. This is a layer here, which I can turn on and off. And the nice thing too is you can erase. I can flip my pen around and erase no matter what pen I'm using, and I can use pens, pencils, crayons, chalk, oil color, watercolor, what have you. But right now I'm using kind of a pen. So that was my sketch. I could, if I wanted to, rename that layer sketch or sketch, even better. And I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call that line work. And on there I'm going to draw in black. I can also, using the magnifying tool if I wanted to, zoom in a little bit so I get more detail. And I can make my pen size bigger and smaller, if you see the cursor there. Now I like to use pens that give me a variable width. This is gives you a nice line, and it gives you the movement of your hand, the tilt, the angle. It just generally looks nice. And if you're working in brushes or oils or watercolors, of course, it's also fantastic with the brush pressure and what have you not. It gives you different blends and effects. So let's say here, that's my sketches there. I'm on the line work. This is just going to be a very quick demonstration to give you a rough idea. You know, the artist can work on a separate layer, and you'd have your line art on one layer, and you would have your sketch on the other. You could delete your sketch later. And what I then like to do is color paint on the actual canvas, where I would then pick, for example, watercolors, and then I would mix colors here, and I could just go in, pick a yellow, and I don't have to worry about smudging my lines because they're on a different layer. And because this is watercolor, I can mix, I can add a little orange there, I can give him a shadow. And again, I can erase. I could actually either go over it with a lighter color, or I can use my eraser to erase watercolor, which of course is not possible in real life. But that was just a horrible duck, and I never want to see it again. So, if we had, let's see, what do we have here? I could also scan in my line artwork and then just color it in Painter, for example. That's something I do quite often. I also just sometimes like to draw directly in Painter or Illustrator because it gives you a unique kind of a line as well. I'm very used to this now, so I'm just looking at the screen while my hand just draws. I don't have to look down or anything. There are other tablets where you actually see the drawing through the tablet. Those are fun also. I just happen not to use those at the moment because I'm used to this. And also there's a slight breakability factor in those. If you crack the screen, they don't work, and they're also a little bit more expensive. So again, I'm just doodling here. I don't even know what I'm doing. So, and there's the actual canvas. The nice thing in Painter is I can rotate my canvas too. If you're used to drawing on paper, you'll find that people do that a lot. They turn their canvases around when they're drawing or when they're coloring. You can't do this in Photoshop, so that's kind of unique. And the other nice thing, of course, you can zoom in, you can zoom out. When I draw with ink, I usually color with watercolor. I usually draw on nice, handmade, usually French watercolor paper. And I find that even when I work digitally, I like to have a kind of a watercolor because it blends, it gives me that blended effect, and I can make nice gradients. And it's really nice because I can delete. If I don't like what I'm doing, I just delete it, erase it, cover it up, go over it. You could also draw, you can have wet canvases, dry canvases in Painter, which is amazing. And then you could dry the canvas and go over it with another media, paint, oils, acrylics, whatever. So now I'm just making my brush bigger because I want to do the background of the nice big. And as you can see, it gives you that nice, it smears it, it runs into it, each other, the areas. And if I wanted to go in there with a red, it would blend. It would not just cover it up in this specific paint, depending on what you're using, it would cover it right up. It's an amazing program, and of course there's so many things I could show you. This is just to show you that the lines are there and the canvas is there. It's almost like an animation. You used to draw on one side of the acrylic, of the foil, and then they would paint on the other. And it's kind of the same idea.